We're here this afternoon to listen to Elizabeth Bishop read, and that's an uncommon privilege. I first heard Miss Bishop read some 10 or 12 years ago, and since that time I have endeavored never to miss the opportunity to hear her read again. And I think I've kept that resolution, but the opportunities nonetheless have been relatively few. Each of Miss Bishop's readings counts, but even more importantly, essential to her example, every poem that she writes counts. She is an exacting critic, as her students, some of whom I see among you, know very well. But she is most exacting of all with herself. And her poems, their pressure characteristically more palpable than apparent, her poems achieve the special radiance of lucid completion. Miss Bishop's reading today, though, has additional resonance. Robert Lowell, whom we have not yet begun to know how to be without, would have been 60 years old today, 61 years old today. Miss Bishop is reading to honor the birthday of her friend and fellow poet, and her reading will be followed immediately by a reception at the Houghton Library, to which you are all cordially invited. A reception to mark the opening of an exhibition of Lowell manuscripts, an exhibition which I am certain you will find of compelling interest. It is a great satisfaction to have Elizabeth Bishop give a reading under the auspices of the Morris Gray Poetry Fund, and to have this reading take place on March 1st, 1978. Ms. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Can you hear me, everybody? Is this mic working all right? Well, March 1st, Robert Lowell always said it was his birthday, but I had a suspicion that he may have been a leap year baby and he just said his birthday was March 1st. I don't really know. But I'm going to read some of his early poems first. You probably all are fairly familiar with Lord Weary's Castle and the early poems that are so much about Boston and about his family. And I'm going to read two about his relatives in memory of Arthur Winslow and in memory of Mary Winslow, his wife. These are full of Boston references. The boat club, the Swan boats, Phillips House, the hospital, and so on. The first one is called Death from Cancer. This Easter, Arthur Winslow, less than dead, your people set you up in Phillips House to settle off your wrestling with the crab. The claws drop flesh upon your yachting blouse until longshoreman Karen come and stab through your adjusted bed and crush the crab. On Boston Basin, shells hit water by the Union Boat Club wharf. You ponder why the cox's squeakings dwarf the resurrexit dominus of all the bells. Grandfather Winslow, look, the swan boats coast that island in the public gardens where the bread-stuffed ducks are brooding, where with tub and strainer the mid-Sunday Irish scare the sun-struck shallows for the dusky chub this Easter. And the ghost of risen Jesus walks the waves to run Arthur upon a trumpeting black swan beyond Charles River to the Acheron, where the wide waters and their voyager are one. And then this is his grandmother, Mary Winslow, a few years later. Her Irish maids could never spoon out mush or orange juice enough. The body cools and smiles as a sick child who adds up figures, and hush grips at the poised relations, sipping sherry and tracking up the carpets of her four-room kingdom. On the rigid Charles, in snow, Karen the lubber clambers from his wherry and stops her hideous baby squawks and yells, wit's clowning afterthought. Nothing will go again. Even the gelded picador baiting the twinned runt bulls with walrus horns before the Spanish bells is veiled with all the childish bibelot. Those are decorations on the mantelpiece, I think. Mary Winslow is dead. Out on the Charles, the shells hold water, and their oar blades drag, littered with captivated ducks. And now the bell rope in King's Chapel Tower unsnarls and bells the bestial cow from Boston Common. She's dead, but stop, neighbor. These pillows prop her that her terrified and child's cold eyes glass what they're not. Our Copley ancestress, grandiloquent, square-jowled, and worldly wise, a Cleopatra in her housewife's dress. Nothing will go again. The bells cry, come, come home. The babbling chapel belfry cries, come, Mary Winslow, come, I bell thee home. This is another early one from Lord Wary's Castle. It is about Boston. And he mentions the pepper pot. Maybe some of you know that the Longfellow Bridge is called the pepper pot because it has those granite things on it that look like pepper pots or salt shakers or something. And there are a couple of others. I guess that's about all that you need to be explained. I saw the sky descending black and white, not blue, on Boston, where the winters wore the skulls to jack-o'-lanterns on the slates, and hunger's skin and bone retrievers tore the chickadee and shrike. The thorn tree waits its victim, and tonight the worms will eat the dead wood to the foot of Ararat. The scyther's time and death, helmed locusts, move upon the tree of breath. The wild engrafted olive and the root are withered, and a winter drifts to where the pepper pot, ironic rainbow, spans Charles River, and its scales of scorched earth miles. I saw my city in the scales, the pans of judgment rising and descending. Piles of dead leaves char the air. And I am a red arrow on this graph of revelations. Every dove is sold. The chapel's sharp-shinned eagles shifts its hold on serpent time, the rainbow's epitaph. In Boston, serpents whistle at the cold. The victim climbs the altar steps and sings, Hosanna to the lion, lamb, and beast who fans the furnace face of Is with wings. I breathe the ether of my marriage feast. At the high altar, gold and a fair cloth. I kneel, and the wings beat my cheek. What can the dove of Jesus give you now but wisdom, exile? Stand and live. The dove has brought an olive branch to eat. skipping to 2 or 3 poems from the book called Life Studies. It was 10 years or more, a little more, I think, later than the first book. And these poems, the first 2 I'm going to read, are very sad because, as you probably all know, he had very tragic breakdowns from time to time. But what was wonderful about him was the way he recovered from these things, always started writing again and wrote magnificent poetry very soon afterwards. The first one is called Waking in the Blue, and this is about one of these experiences. The night attendant, a BU sophomore, rouses from the mare's nest of his drowsy head propped on the meaning of meaning. He catwalks down our corridor. Azure day makes my agonized blue window bleaker. Crows maunder on the petrified fairway. Absence. My heart grows tense as though a harpoon were sparring for the kill. This is parentheses. This is the house for the mentally ill. What use is my sense of humor? I grin at Stanley, now sunk in his 60s, once a Harvard All-American fullback, if such were possible, still hoarding the build of a boy in his 20s as he soaks a ramrod with the muscle of a seal in his long tub, vaguely urinous from the Victorian plumbing. A kingly granite profile in a crimson golf cap worn all day, all night. He thinks only of his figure, of slimming on sherbet and ginger ale. More cut off from words than a seal. This is the way day breaks in Bowditch Hall at McLean's. The hooded night lights bring out Bobby, Porcellian, 29. A replica of Louis XVI without the wig. Redolent and roly-poly as a sperm whale as he swashbuckles about in his birthday suit and horses at chairs. These victorious figures of bravado, ossified, young. In between the limits of day, hours and hours go by under the crew haircuts and slightly too little nonsensical bachelor twinkle of the Roman Catholic attendants. There are no Mayflower screwballs in the Catholic Church. After a hearty New England breakfast, I weigh 200 pounds this morning. Cock of the walk, I strut in my turtleneck French sailor's jersey before the metal shaving mirrors and see the shaky future grow familiar in the pinched, indigenous faces of these thoroughbred mental cases, twice my age and half my weight. We are all old-timers. Each of us holds a locked razor. Now this is one written after such an experience called Home After 3 Months Away. Gone now the baby's nurse, a lioness who ruled the roost and made the mother cry. She used to tie gobbets of pork rind in bow knots of gauze. 3 months they hung like soggy toast on our 8-foot magnolia tree and helped the English sparrows weather a Boston winter. 3 months, 3 months. Is Richard now himself again? Dimpled with exultation, my daughter holds her levy in the tub. Our noses rub. Each of us pats a stringy lock of hair. They tell me nothing's gone. Though I'm 41, not 40 now, the time I put away was child's play. After 13 weeks, my child still dabs her cheeks to start me shaving. When we dress her in her sky blue corduroy, she changes to a boy and floats my shaving brush and washcloth in the flush. Dearest, I cannot loiter here in lather like a polar bear. Recuperating, I neither spin nor toil. 3 stories down below, a chore man tends our coffin's length of soil, and 7 horizontal tulips blow. Just 12 months ago, those flowers were pedigreed, imported Dutchmen. Now, no one need distinguish them from weed. Bushed by the late spring snow, they cannot meet another year's snowballing enervation. I keep no rank nor station. Cured, I am frizzled, stale, and small. I didn't realize that all these poems were about winter in Boston, but they seem to be. The next one is a fairly well-known poem, and I may have a weakness for it because it's dedicated to me. It's called Skunk Hour. And this was about Castine, Maine, where Robert Lowell went many years for the summer. And I think I was visiting him there a good many years ago when he started writing this poem. And it's really, the ending is right. There were skunks that came around the back door at night, and we went out and with a flashlight and looked at the skunk, tipped over the garbage pail and got things out of it. The whole thing is a very accurate description of Castine, if any of you know that town in Maine. And we went out in a little outboard motorboat and saw the island he describes, and told me about the woman who had actually bought up the land. He's exaggerated a bit, but it's pretty true. Nautilus Island's hermit, Nautilus Island hermit Eris still lives through winter in her Spartan cottage. Her sheep still graze above the sea. Her son's a bishop. Her farmer is first selectman in our village. She's in her dotage. Thirsting for the hierarchic privacy of Queen Victoria's century, she buys up all the eyesores facing her shore and lets them fall. The season's ill. We've lost our summer millionaire, who seemed to leap from an LL Bean catalog. His 9-knot yawl was auctioned off to lobstermen. A red fox stain covers Blue Hill. And now our fairy decorator brightens his shop for fall. His fishnets filled with orange cork. Orange, his cobbler's bench and all. There is no money in his work, he'd rather marry. One dark night, my Tudor Ford climbed the hill's skull. I watched for love cars. Lights turned down, they lay together hull to hull, where the graveyard shelves on the town. My mind's not right. A car radio bleats, love, oh careless love. I hear my ill spirit sob in each blood cell, as if my hand were at its throat. I myself am hell, nobody's here. Only skunks that search in the moonlight for a bite to eat. They march on their souls up Main Street, white stripes, moonstruck eyes, red fire, under the chalk dry and spire of the Trinitarian Church. I stand on top of our back steps and breathe the rich air. A mother skunk with her column of kittens swills a garbage pail. She jabs her wedge head in a cup of sour cream, drops her ostrich tail, and will not scare. I thought love cars was a wonderful invention of words. It should be. Now, I'm going to read a poem from Robert Lowell's last book called Day by Day, and this again has personal meanings for me. My friend Frank Bedart was going to visit Robert Lowell, and at the last moment I thought I'd like to send a present, and I couldn't think of anything, and I picked up I had a Brazilian ex voto. It was a funny looking head made of balsa wood, painted, and had holes in the top of the head and so on. Someone had presented it to a church because he'd recovered from, I don't know what, some head injury or other, so I sent that along. And afterwards I thought maybe that wasn't a very nice present, but apparently he liked it very much because he wrote this poem about it, which I'll read you now. It's called Thanks Offering for Recovery. The airy going house grows small tonight and soft enough to be crumpled up like a handkerchief in my hand. Here with you by this hotbed of coals, I am the homme sensuel, free to turn my back on the lamp and work. Something has been taken off, a wooden winter shadow. Goodbye, nothing. I give thanks, thanks. Thanks, too, for this small Brazilian ex voto. This primitive head sent me across the Atlantic by my friend. A cork weight thing to be offered, Deo gratias, in church on recovering from head injury or migraine. Now mercifully delivered in my hands, though shelved a while, unnoticing and unnoticed. Free of the unshakable terror that made me write, I pick it up, a head holy and unholy, tonsured or damaged, with gross black charcoal brows and stern eyes, frowning as if they'd seen the splendor times past counting. Unspoiled, solemn as a child is serious. Light balsa wood, the color of my skin. It's all childcraft, especially its shallow, chiseled ears. Crudely healed scars lumped out to listen to itself, perhaps not knowing it was made to be given up. Goodbye, nothing. Blockhead. I would take you to church if any church would take you. This winter I thought I was created to be given away. Now I'm going to read two or three of my own poems. One of them, the first one is called The Armadillo, and the reason I'm reading that is because Robert Lowell liked this poem. I wrote this before he wrote Skunk Hour, and he said that this poem had influenced him, although Skunk Hour is a much more serious poem. And when I published the book, I wanted to dedicate something to him, and I didn't have anything new, so I dedicated this to him. And there is a kind of exchange. He thought mine came first. I think his came first, anyway. And this is about St. John's Day in South America, which is there the shortest day of the year. It's the longest day here, of course. And it's a great celebration, a very primitive, old-fashioned celebration where people still jump through bonfires and make wishes, and it's usually very cold. And these fire balloons they send up are huge things, and they travel miles and miles, and they're forbidden because they set forest fires, but they still use them. This is the time of year when almost every night the frail, illegal fire balloons appear, climbing the mountain height, rising toward a saint still honored in these parts, The paper chambers flush and fill with light that comes and goes like hearts. Once up against the sky, it's hard to tell them from the stars, planets, that is, the tinted ones. Venus going down, or Mars, or the pale green one. With the wind they flare and falter, wobble and toss, but if it's still, they steer between the kite sticks of the Southern Cross, receding, dwindling, solemnly and steadily forsaking us, or in the downdraft from a peak suddenly turning dangerous. Last night, another big one fell. It splattered like an egg of fire against the cliff behind the house. The flame ran down. We saw the pair of owls who nest there flying up and up, their whirling black and white stained bright pink underneath, until they shrieked up out of sight. The ancient owl's nest must have burned. Hastily, all alone, a glistening armadillo left the scene, rose-flecked, head down, tail down, and then a baby rabbit jumped out, short-eared to our surprise. So soft, a handful of intangible ash with fixed, ignited eyes. Too pretty, dreamlike mimicry. Oh, falling fire and piercing cry and panic, and a weak mailed fist clenched ignorant against the sky. I'm going to read a poem from my last book that is rather long, but very simple, I think, very easy to follow. And it's about a bus trip from Nova Scotia to Boston a long time ago. And there are lots of local places mentioned, some of you may know. And I discovered after I started off that I was on the wrong bus. I mean, I was going in the right direction, but I took not the express bus, that one that went way around, made a lot of different stops, so these are mentioned. And this was dedicated to my aunt, Mrs. Bowers. It's called The Moose. From narrow provinces of fish and bread and tea, home of the long tides, where the bay leaves the sea twice a day and takes the herring's long rides, where, if the river enters or retreats in a wall of brown foam, depends on if it meets the bay coming in, the bay not at home, where, silted red, sometimes the sun sets facing a red sea, and others veins the flats lavender, rich mud in burning rivulets. On red, gravelly roads, down rows of sugar maples, past clabbered farmhouses and neat clabbered churches, bleached, ridged as clamshells, past twin silver birches. Through late afternoon, a bus journeys west, the windshield flashing pink, pink glancing off of metal, brushing the dented flank of blue, beat-up enamel. Down hollows, up rises, and waits patient while a lone traveler gives kisses and embraces to 7 relatives and a collie supervises. Goodbye to the elms, to the farm, to the dog. The bus starts. The light grows richer. The fog, shifting, salty, thin, comes closing in. Its cold, round crystals form and slide and settle in the white hen's feathers, in gray glazed cabbages, on the cabbage roses and lupins like apostles. The sweet peas cling to their wet white string on the whitewashed fences. Bumblebees creep inside the foxgloves, and evening commences. One stop at Bass River, then the economies, lower, middle, upper, 5 islands, 5 houses, where a woman shakes a tablecloth out after supper. A pale flickering, gone. The Tantramar marshes and the smell of salt hay. An iron bridge trembles and a loose plank rattles but doesn't give way. On the left, a red light swims through the dark, a ship's port lantern. 2 rubber boots show, illuminated, solemn. A dog gives 1 bark. A woman climbs in with 2 market bags, brisk, freckled, elderly. A grand night, yes, sir, all the way to Boston. She regards us amicably. Moonlight as we enter the New Brunswick woods, hairy, scratchy, splintery. Moonlight and mist caught in them like lamb's wool on bushes in a pasture. The passengers lie back, snores, some long sighs. A dreamy divagation begins in the night, a gentle, auditory, slow hallucination. In the creakings and noises, an old conversation, not concerning us, but recognizable somewhere back in the bus. Grandparents' voices, uninterruptedly talking in eternity. Names being mentioned, things cleared up finally. What he said, what she said, who got pensioned, deaths and sicknesses. The year he remarried, the year something happened. She died in childbirth. That was a son lost when the schooner foundered. He took to drink, yes, she went to the bad. When Amos began to pray, even in the store, and finally the family had to put him away. Yes, that peculiar affirmative. Yes, I can't say it. A sharp, indrawn breath, half groan, half acceptance. That means life's like that. We know it, also death. Talking the way they talked in the old feather bed, peacefully on and on. Dim lamplight in the hall. Down in the kitchen, the dog tucked in her shawl. Now, it's all right now, even to fall asleep, just as on all those nights. Suddenly, the bus driver stops with a jolt, turns off his lights. A moose has come out of the impenetrable wood and stands there, looms, rather, in the middle of the road. It approaches. It sniffs at the bus's hot hood. Towering, antlerless, high as a church, homely as a house, or safe as houses, a man's voice assures us perfectly harmless. Some of the passengers exclaim in whispers, childishly, softly, "Sure are big creatures. It's awful plain. Look, it's a she." Taking her time, she looks the bus over, grand, otherworldly. Why do we all feel, this sweet sensation of joy? Curious creature, says our quiet driver, rolling his R's. Look at that, would you? Then he shifts gears. For a moment longer, by craning backward, the moose can be seen on the moonlit macadam. Then there's a dim smell of moose, an acrid smell of gasoline. This is quite true. A friend of mine in Maine saw this poem and told me that a buck deer had come out of the wood and sniffed their car. And not only that, when they start up again, the deer chased them for over a mile. So these things do happen. I'm going to read one more poem. This is about Brazil, and it's called Santarem, which is the name of a small city about 2/3 of the way down the Amazon, I think. And I've been asked what the name means, and I'm sorry to say I don't know. It's named for, as so many places in Brazil are, for a city in Portugal, a town in Portugal. And I should have looked that up, but I really don't know. course, I may be remembering it all wrong after how many years? That golden evening, I really wanted to go no farther. More than anything else, I wanted to stay a while in that conflux of two great rivers, Tapajos, Amazon, grandly, silently flowing east. Suddenly there had been houses, people, and lots of mongrel riverboats skittering back and forth under a sky of gorgeous, underlit clouds, with everything gilded, burnished along one side, and everything bright, cheerful, casual, or so it looked. I liked the place. I liked the idea of the place. Two rivers. Hadn't two rivers sprung from the Garden of Eden? No, that was four, and they had diverged. Here only two, and coming together. Even if one were tempted to literary interpretations, such as life, death, right, wrong, male, female, such notions would have dissolved straight off in that watery, dazzling dialectic. In front of the church, the cathedral rather, there was a modest promenade and a belvedere about to fall into the river. Stubby palms, flamboyants like pans of embers, buildings 1 story high, stucco, blue or yellow, and one house faced with azulejos, buttercup yellow, that's tiles. The street was deep in dark gold river sand, damp from the ritual afternoon rain, and teams of zebus plodded, gentle, proud, and blue, with down-curved horns and hanging ears, pulling carts with solid wheels. The zebus' hooves, the people's feet waded in golden sand, dampered by golden sand, so that almost the only sounds were creaks and shush, shush, shush. Two rivers full of crazy shipping, people all apparently changing their minds, embarking, disembarking, rowing clumsy dories. After the Civil War, some Southern families came here. Here they could still own slaves. They left occasional blue eyes, English names, and oars. No other place, no one on all the Amazon's 4,000 miles does anything but paddle. A dozen or so young nuns, white-habited, waved gaily from an old stern whaler getting up steam, already hung with hammocks. Off to their mission, days and days away up God knows what lost tributary. Side wheelers, countless wobbling dugouts. A cow stood up in one, quite calm, chewing her cud, while being ferried, tipping, wobbling, somewhere, to be married. A river schooner with raked masts and violet-colored sails tacked in so close her bowsprit seemed to touch the church. The cathedral, rather. A week or so before, there had been a thunderstorm, and the cathedral had been struck by lightning. One tower had a widening zigzag crack all the way down. It was a miracle. The priest's house right next door had been struck too, and his brass bed, the only one in town, galvanized black. Gracias a Dios, he'd been in Belém. In the blue pharmacy, the pharmacist had hung an empty wasp's nest from a shelf. Small, exquisite, clean, matte white, and hard as stucco. I admired it so much he gave it to me. Then my ship's whistle blew. I couldn't stay. Back on board, a fellow passenger, Mr. Swan, Dutch, the retiring head of Phillips Electric, really a very nice old man, who wanted to see the Amazon before he died, asked, "What's that ugly thing?" I think that's enough. Thank you very much.